So we are going to be presenting today on advocacy, and it's one of the things I am very, very passionate about. So I already gave you a little bit about myself, so I'm not going to go into this slide, but there's me. And I would like to open up the floor for discussion questions. So what does advocacy mean to you is the first question. And what does advocacy in the speech language pathology field look like to you? So if you could just either raise your hand, speak out, or put it in the chat, I would love that as well. So first question, what does advocacy mean to you? Second question, what does advocacy in the speech language pathology field look like to you?
Well, I know for myself, I always like to speak up for children who have disabilities, especially the 0 to 3. So basically to let them know about, the parents know about the children's rights, also to know what's available for them and to help them through the process to get into early intervention.
Great.
I
Yes.
basically, just like to help people and just, speak for them when they can't speak.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to me as well. And you work with EI, but I happen to work with school age children. So this presentation is going to be based on my own experience with having to advocate for myself in school and my mom having to advocate for me, and as well as what I've experienced in my work as well. Okay, so let's get into it. So we're going to define advocacy. So according to the Elders' Rights Advocacy Group, advocacy is about helping a person's wishes and rights be heard, especially in regards to decisions that affect their lives. And I love this, right? Because as speech language pathologists, that's what we do. We help people advocate for things that they want in their lives. So I absolutely love this definition. So why is advocacy necessary? According to the American Speech, Hearing, and Language and Hearing Association, advocacy is necessary because we need advocacy to help educate, inform, and persuade. And those are all things we do in our role as SLPs. So, do speech language pathologists play a role in advocacy? And the answer is a big yes. So in some of the ways that we play a role in advocacy, we play a role by educating. So we share information or expertise pertaining to disorders, strategies, techniques with our colleagues, parents, and other professionals. So think of this as an interdisciplinary approach, right? So sometimes we may hand out evidence-based practice research, pamphlets. We may model some of our techniques so that the parents can use them at home. We may also show videos. Sometimes we also do this by informing. So explaining to people what our profession actually entails and the role we play in terms of helping their children and what our recommendations of service may be. And sometimes we also do this by persuading other professionals to collaborate with us. And most recently in my experience, which is like one of my pet peeves now, we have to explain why our child's mandate should be increased or decreased, or why they should or should not be discharged to our CSE coordinator. But wait, we should add empowerment to our role of advocacy. So yes, advocacy encompasses education and informing and persuading, but it is also about empowering. So I love this definition from Oxford Dictionary. And it says empowering means to make someone stronger and confident, especially in controlling their life and claiming their rights. So a little bit of story time for me. When I was first diagnosed with cerebral palsy spastic quadriplegia, which is the worst form, the doctors told my mom that I would not be able to walk, talk, crawl, do any of those things. And luckily for me, I was very blessed in the fact that my mom didn't believe any of those things that the doctors were saying. And she's like, oh, I know my child's going to be someone someday, right? But for some parents, hearing all those negative prognosis about their children can give them a negative perception of what may happen, right? So for us, we sometimes are that one person that can give them hope and be that beacon of hope for them. Because when you hear constantly, your child is not going to be able to do this, your child's not going to be able to do this, sometimes because you keep hearing all that negativity, you begin to build up a self-fulfilled prophecy. So we can come in and be that beacon of hope and say, hey, we can make change. And I will be that partner with you to help you try to make change in your child's life. So how can we empower our parents? I touched on it a bit. We can point them in the direction of organizations that will support them with whatever they need. Help them understand that they hold all the power and their voice matters by actively listening, informing them of the IEP or individual service plan process, informing them that they can become a parent advocate, or if they need a parent advocate to be there and they can, or a translator to be a part of the IEP process, informing them if they can't find a provider inside of their school, they can also get one through the Board of Ed and help the Board of Ed will help them find a provider on the outside, giving them the independent contractor list so that they can call on their own. And also there's impartial hearings. But one thing I think that is very imperative for us is that we be a sounding board and a cheerleader. So how can we empower our clients? It varies according to our age ranges and who we're working with, right? But for preschool, elementary, and ably different individuals, you're going to talk to the parents about what they would like their children's goals to be, ask them about their children's interest, and sometimes you may be able to ask the child, create activities around their likes to target goals, reinforce desired behaviors by providing specific feedback. So like, good job, you made the T sound by keeping your tongue behind your teeth, or uh-oh, let's try that again, right? And make sure you keep your tongue behind your teeth when you make the T sound. And I know you can do it. One of the things that I like to do is actually make mistakes on purpose, because when the child becomes skilled at the target, then he or she can become the teacher. So for middle school and high school, I do it a bit differently. So I also talk about the parents, right? Because our parents are going to be our biggest collaborator in this whole process. But I also ask the child what they want their goals to be. So a typical session for me on the first day would be sitting down with my client and I'll say, okay, I'm going to be your speech therapist this year. What would you like to work on? Sometimes they will tell me like, I don't even know why I'm here, right? So then you explain to them what your role is and why they are with you. And sometimes what I like to privy off with is, it's a team. I cannot do this job without you, so I need your help. You help them create a self-inventory. So what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And sometimes you may need to help them identify those strengths and weaknesses. And I also like to role play real life scenarios. So I'm really big on advocacy. So for my older students, we will work on talking to their teachers about what they need to help them be more successful in the classroom. And also you want to develop activities that they can relate to. For all populations, you want to acknowledge when they are frustrated, listen to them and help them work through it. Excuse me. And help them work through it. Sorry, my allergies are bothering me today. How can we empower our colleagues? So, right, sometimes we've all been here at one point or another. We get a little bit of burnout. So we can encourage them to keep going, encouraging them to learn new things, and sometimes reignite that passion. What I like to do is ask them why they wanted to be in their field in the first place and give them helpful strategies to help our students. So another story I will share with you is that when I was in middle school, I had a math teacher who said, oh, I don't know how to teach her this math, and it's complicated and it's hard. And luckily, again, I had a great mom who helped me come up with strategies to figure out. And it was geometry, guys. I could not figure it out for the life of me, but it was because of my visual perceptual difficulties. Sometimes the middle of the line for me is like at the end of the table. So my mom helped me come up with strategies of highlighting the different angles. But it would have been helpful to have my speech therapist come in as well and say, hey, let's try some strategies and see what will work for her. This is what I use in my room. This is how we work on it together. So empowerment is our role, because we know that sometimes any small amount of progress can make a world of difference in our client's life. We have the unique ability to see the whole child. We often give clients the ability to feel seen and heard. And sometimes it only takes one person to believe that our clients can be more and do more, and it allows others to catch hold of faith or belief. Additional ways of advocating: become a parent advocate, get involved with ASHA advocacy efforts so you can become an ASHA advocate, or just start speaking up and out about things you are passionate about and let your voice be heard. And an additional way of my advocacy is I have a podcast called Queens on a Roll, and it was basically created to educate and inspire people about the ably different community. And I left all the links there. It's become my baby, and it's blew up into this big thing that I couldn't imagine. So it's going really great. And then here are some helpful resources for parents or anyone you may know who may need it. So Parent to Parent of New York State is a very great website. It's full of resources to help families of children with disabilities. So they give you different websites like Include NYC, Autism Speaks, and then New York City DOE has helpful information about the IEP process. They even have a parent university portal where you can sign in and create an account that gives you a plethora of courses that parents can take for free, and they give parents a plethora of resources. And there's also a website that informs you on how to become a parent advocate. So if you have some courses in special education or speech, you can actually become a parent advocate, or just simply go to our ASHA site and become an ASHA advocate. So here are my references. Any questions? Any questions for me?
Hi, Latavia. I actually have a comment. I really enjoyed how you shared how when you were connected with the older students, because I do
Yeah.
think that there is always sometimes difficulty with actually getting them to show up for a session. So with the introduction, when you first get the older student to come into your session, do you have like some sort of a script or to go over with them?
No, so what I typically do with my middle schoolers and high schoolers, because by that time they're typically over speech. They've had speech for a while. Sometimes they don't even know what it is. And so we'll typically sit down and have a conversation, and I'll say, what do you want, if they are verbal, of course, what do you want to get out of this school year, right? Well, I don't need speech at all. Okay, if you don't need speech, I'm on your side. Like, speech is not supposed to be forever. You're supposed to eventually get off of it. I'm on your side and I want to help you get there. How can I help you get there? And sometimes, because IEPs don't usually have the updated goals or updated progress, what I like to do is give them a little informal assessment, and I'll give them some time to do it on their own. And then I'll say, okay, can you do it? And they'll struggle a bit. And then they'll say, okay, I think I need help with this, this, and this. So I want to work on. So this past year, I did that to one of my students. And when he gave it back to me, he said, you know what? I want to work on not speaking so ghetto. So I said, great. That's working on building up your vocabulary. We can work on writing skills. We can do it through hip hop music, any way you would like. But that gives me a starting point to go from where you would like to go. And so that's how I usually start off my sessions. And of course, I do it by just games. So a lot of my middle schoolers and high schoolers, they're competitive. So we'll play Uno and we'll engage in conversation that way. And I can get a lot out of them just to see who they are, what they may want from this, and how I can help them. So I always come across as a partner. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, that was extremely helpful. And I actually, I can agree. I can imagine that, it gives them the autonomy to be able to make those decisions when they come in and they have their own goals. Like, I want to work on this, want to work on that. So thank you so much, Latavia, for sharing that technique.
You're welcome. And I definitely kind of picked that up just through my experience. I also had speech therapy. So I didn't like it when speech therapists were just like, here, do this, and then you could go, right? Like, it makes no sense. Like, what am I doing this for? Why am I here? And that's also a part of advocating, learning how to advocate for yourself, telling someone what you need, right? So I kind of start off from the gate like that. And I'm a partner in this partnership with you, and I need you to do this with me. And we all have the same goal. You want to get off the speech? I want you to get off the speech. But here's what we need to do in order for you to do that. So it generally worked. I had one of my students this past year say, I felt seen and heard by you. I've never felt that before. And he literally broke down and cried. And in turn, that made me cry because that means I reached him in some way, and he felt seen and heard by me. So that means I did my job. That was, so.
You're about to advocate. When did you start to advocate for yourself?
Oh boy. I kind of had to do that my whole life. Luckily, I've had a strong woman behind me, so she kind of taught me the ropes, because my mom was right in there from early intervention, teaching me how to do it. But I would say she backed off a bit my last year of high school, and she was like, okay, now I'm passing the torch to you. You watched me navigate and go through the system, and this is how I do it. Now it's your turn to take over and you do it. And I've had a few lumps and bumps along the way, right? But we learn by trial and error. So I would say from the age of 18 on, I have been advocating for myself, because I have to advocate for myself in the workforce. I have to advocate for myself in school. So I have become super fierce at it now.
Hero, you know that. We do have a question. Someone has a question. Shakira Lloyd.
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's just a comment, just to piggyback on, the previous discussion in terms of advocating for yourself. I also feel that it's very important that as, clinicians, we do give the students the tool to advocate for themselves in terms of letting them know, what modifications that they're entitled to. Say, for example, a child with a visual disability, you're expected to get a large print for exams, whatever, so that they also know what they should be getting and, speaking up about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And that's one of the things I do. Like, we will go over the IEP and they'll say, let me see it. I want to see what it looks like. They're old now, so they can see. And I'll say, okay, you get these accommodations. How does separate location help you? Oh, it helps me keep distractions. Okay, you not only get that for tests, but you also get it for quizzes in the classroom. So if that's something you need so that you are not distracted by everything going on around you, what do you need to say to your teacher? Like, we will practice it. What do you need to say to your teacher so that you can do well on this exam? I need to tell her that I need to be pulled out and put somewhere separate so that I can be able to focus. Exactly. And so we'll role play it, and then I will go to the teacher and we will practice until they feel confident enough to do it on their own. And then they feel like a sense of pride. Like, I was able to tell them exactly what I needed when I needed it. So I definitely do think that's important.
I know that you are a professor at the
Yes.
college. I'd like to know, how do you you train your students or teach your students about how to advocate for their clients?
I'm really big on actively listening to your client, right? Or actively listening to the parent, and make sure that even if you're not understanding what they're saying in the moment, you can kind of paraphrase it back and say, okay, so this is what you want from me. This is what you want us to get out of this session. Okay, great. In order for me to do that, so it's a lot of positive reinforcement, but also making them feel like this is a partnership. I'm not your teacher. It's not a top-down thing. We're working together as a team. And so I need your feedback in order for me to do my job the best that I can. So I really try to teach my students to go into it with an open mind. Because sometimes I feel like society's misconceptions about everything can kind of distort our images and our views about certain things. So you go into it with an open mind, blank slate, and you create that partnership foundation, and then you build things around those activities so that the client feels seen and heard, the parent feels seen and heard, and you want to keep in constant communication with the client, right? So maybe at the end of the session, did this activity work for you? What was good about it? What should I tweak next time? Or what should we work on? For the parent, do you like how the progress is going? So you do those weekly check-ins, right? To make sure the parent feels comfortable and the client feels comfortable. And we're all on the same page. You always want to keep that constant communication.
Thank you. My second question would be, what kind of feedback do you get from your parents and from your students when you teach them how to advocate for their?
Well, my parents, I've had one this past school year that's always like, can you please come back? Because for the first time, you heard me. For the first time, I may not be, and that's the other thing too. Like sometimes parents may not be able to fully articulate to you what they want, right? So and this is why I say that we are advocates in our own way, because we have the unique ability to break everything down, explain it, and then for them to digest it and understand it, and then say, okay, I didn't mean it this way. I meant that I want this, right? So a lot of my parents will say, I felt seen and heard by you. Can you come back next year? Because you actually took your time to hear me, and implement what I wanted for my child, and I actually see the growth. For the clients, it's always making me cry, because the clients will say like, for the first time, I felt seen by someone and heard by someone, and not always seen as like the troublesome kid or the disruptor. You actually saw what my issues were and wanted to work on it. And I think that's super big for middle and high schoolers, because by the time they get to that age, right, they're just trying to figure out ways to fit in. So teachers sometimes parents will say like, oh, they just like to disrupt the class, right? But I tend to sometimes go in there and say, could it be that maybe he doesn't know how to read, or he doesn't understand what you're asking, so he's trying to find a way to fit in socially so that he's not teased on? It doesn't necessarily mean that he's being disruptive or she's being disruptive or trying to cause chaos. It just may be like, I want to be seen and heard, and I kind of fade into the background when I'm in this environment because I can't excel. So with you, I don't feel like that. I don't feel like I'm lost and no one sees me. You see me and you hear me, and thank you for seeing and hearing me as well.